In our work and ministry here at Granite Peak, we utilize the principles of our mission statement, which reads as follows. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Abundant thanks for the flexibility and adaptability of this morning's production crew. There have been many hours spent behind the scenes all week long. Busy bees have been down here setting up for this morning. So thank you to Lena at our recently relocated piano, Martin at our still being hooked up and adapted AV system, who's behind the screen because smoke is coming out of his ears. Greeters, the coffee makers, and especially to Brian Willison, who and his helpers, who they have led the reconfiguration of this space by giving much time, thought, and many hours of work to turn this social hall into our temporary place of worship. At this time, please silence your electronic devices to avoid the intense embarrassment that comes from inserting lively music, but it's quite inappropriate, into our morning service. There are numerous ways to learn about the activities and events of our congregation. Information is available on our website at prescottuu.org. All the weekly news that's fit to print is in the Weekly Peak, and more can be found about us in our monthly newsletter, which is The View. Our children this morning are across the street and being taught by our also capable head of religious education for children, Sandra Palacios. Today, with spring just around the corner, the children will learn about germination, the process of seeds developing into new plants. And who better to assist her this morning than our resident gardener, Stephen Lovejoy. Oh, it's right here. Okay, hi, Stephen. The children will also be creating a sunflower, which is the national symbol of Ukraine and represents resistance, unity, and hope. And thank you to Mary Fran for bringing sunflowers in this morning. Dixie King reminds us that there will be a terrific fundraiser for our Granite Peak Food Pantry this Friday, March the 14th. It will be at the Grace Sparks Activity Center and will feature folk singer Tom Nielsen, who is presenting music with a social justice twist. There are flyers in the foyer that explain all the details about the time and how much it costs. It's $15 to $25 at the door. If you are going and can help Dixie with setup, please see her. She'd like to start at 5 for that. And now we have an announcement from the president of our board of directors, Rick Denny, who always has something new and exciting for us.
Isn't this fun? So as president of the board, I've been asked to share information about 3 things. The first had to do with the fact that the ministerial research search team, and with the approval of the board, has signed a contract with a minister, Michelle LaGrave. She will be a contract minister here. She's coming on a 2-year renewable contract. She is currently, she has outstanding references. She has been an interim minister in multiple congregations, both in Nebraska and in Texas. No stranger to conservative areas. She is currently at the Austin congregation finishing an interim ministry. She's very excited. She and her partner are very excited about coming, and her mother actually will be coming and joining the congregation. And she's very excited about coming. So you can read a letter that she has written to the congregation in the foyer. It was also sent out as an email to the congregation, so you can read that letter and a couple links to more information about her. So we're very excited about that.
Let's give the board a hand.
Second, we all know that we voted to be here, empty that, reconstruct the building. So the building supervisory committee, company has a very well-qualified team to supervise the work of multiple trades. So there'll be many people in and out of that area. We need to be disciplined too about our communication with them. And so consequently, the board authorized several members of the planning team who have been involved in development of the project to keep track of what's going on. And we've in particular, Dick Walter and Fred Krebs will be the primary means of communication with the builders. So we need to avoid coming around and asking questions and interrupting their work, because they're disciplined, should be efficient. We expect them to be efficient in conducting the project. We don't want to interfere with that. So if you have questions, talk to people who have been involved in the project before, and particularly Dick Walter, who is the primary contact with the building supervisor over there. And so we just need to be cognizant and not interfere with their work. Now, finally, and I'm sorry for the multiple, so much has happened in the past month. It's just astounding, right? Our approval to proceed with the renovation project included authorizing a capital campaign to fund it. So commitments to contribute, or indeed contributions themselves, can be made at any time. And you can talk to Russ Erickson or Norma Meyer about how to do that. There are some different ways of doing it. There's some tax efficient ways of doing it, and so forth. Now, Russ and Norma have been planning to have a big capital campaign kickoff party where commitments would be made and solicited and so forth. And they wanted to have that, and we'd like a party right now. Tomorrow, let's just do it, right? But the fact is, they've prudently decided to delay that kickoff party until April 26th for a very important reason. We want to minimize potential conflict with our superbly organized annual fundraising campaign for the operating budget. This has been so well organized over the years by Marianne Erickson and Marianne Clark, and have a wonderful set of stewards that were introduced last week. So it's really, really important that this sanctuary will be closed, but GPUUC will be open for business, and we need to keep it open. So please take seriously your commitment to the annual stewardship campaign, and welcome the stewards as they come to visit. So we've got two campaigns going on at the same time, and to keep them separate, and hopefully we can make all these good things happen.
One other brief announcement is that it may be necessary for Lisa in our office and Roger in his office to work remotely during the next few months because of the noise and the dust from the construction. So if that happens, please know you can still contact them through the church or the congregation's phone number and email. And now we join other Unitarian Universalists worldwide in the tradition of lighting our chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Fred Ford. Today we light our chalice with the familiar words of Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Our words of gathering by Reverend Calvin Daniel. His parents were conservative Baptists and named him Calvin, and then he became a Unitarian Universalist minister. We are amazingly alive this day and present one with another. May our time together renew our hope. May the stories we share refresh our courage. May the songs we sing lift our spirits. May the words we speak invigorate us. May the touch of hands, the sounds of laughter, the sight of faces, new and familiar, restore us in faith. Amen. Now I invite you to turn in your hymnal, and we're going to give you a little bit of a chance to look for hymn number 40. And stand if you're able to do so. Okay. As you're able, don't stand in this. And we will sing the morning praise the signal. And now I invite you to turn in the order of service to our couple. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for healing is sacrament, and service is its prayer. To come together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, thus to be covenant together.
As we move to the ritual of taking our morning offering, may we contemplate the feeling of connection and community that we share when we gather here each week. Our congregation and its supported by your time, talent, and your financial treasure. In line with our covenant, where we pledge to serve others in community, we share a portion of our Sunday morning plate with local nonprofits through our monthly Seeds of Support program. This month's recipient is the Coalition for Compassion and Justice, which was started by Granite Peak's own member, Paul Mitchell. It's also known as CCJ. Information about their good works is in your order of service. Just to clarify, 1/2 of each Sunday's offering is given to our monthly Seeds of Support recipient, along with any specifically designated checks. If you wish your check or your cash donation to go towards Seeds of Support, you must designate that on the check or on the envelope containing your cash. Otherwise, these funds will go to Granite Peak. Giving may also occur at prescottuu.org. The morning offering will now be taken, and while we enjoy Lena's offertory music, I Am Woman by Helen Reddy. Thanks, Lena. This offering, reflecting your generosity of spirit, is received with love and gratitude. Blessed be. One of the pillars that binds our Granite Peak community together is the love, support, and caring that we extend to one another during milestones in our lives. We will now take a few moments for meditation and music while we silently acknowledge the joys and concerns of our hearts and minds. If there is an event which is a joy or a concern to you, or if you are experiencing hope or gratitude, I invite you to come forward silently and drop a pebble from one of the 2 dishes in our communal water as a reflective ritual honoring our connection to one another. I would like to suggest that people come out and come down the center aisle and then go around the outside to get back to your seats so we don't have a traffic jam. I will begin by dropping a stone in the water for the concerns and unrest being experienced by many of us over the state of our democracy. May our joys and concerns, surrounded by the healing communal water of our beloved community, be acknowledged and held in our hearts as we support and care for one another. So may it be. Please join Lena as we sing Spirit of Life. It's in hymnal 133. Typo, 123.
Robert Dunn is the former laureate of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. A friend of mine from years ago when he and I picked apples together in New Hampshire. He wrote, "There are many books to explain or clarify, and many of them have footnotes to explain and clarify the explanations. Poetry has little to do with such matters." I don't talk much about my poems because I try to make them simple enough for children to understand and parents. Musical notes are closer to the reality of poetry. They neither clarify nor explain, but they move on lighter feet towards you and into you or away. Where there are notes, let them be the text and the burden, and these a simple commentary or counterpoint in prose and verse to edify and confuse. Poems slow us down. No speed reading, no scanning. If prose is like getting into your car and driving fast to your destination, poetry is like getting out of the car and walking, looking, observing, remembering. Poems say to us, slow down, listen, look, notice. This week, as our president aggressively insults our good friends in Canada, I want to talk for a few minutes about my favorite Canadian poet, Margaret Atwood. This Canadian woman first came to my attention several years ago. I was taking a continuing education class on writing. 12 of us were in the class, 11 women and me. At the first session, to help us get to know each other, the instructor asked us to go around the room and give the name of our favorite book. Almost every woman in the room named the same book, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Describes an America ruled by conservative Christians. In her fictional world, fundamentalist Christians have staged a coup, a revolution, so that they can return America to what they consider to be traditional values. The government does not allow women to vote or even to read or write. Environmental pollution has created infertility in many women and men officially, woman and men. Officially, the government considers sexual pleasure to be a sin. The Handmaid's Tale became a bestseller and a television program. It is a feminist version of a fictional totalitarian society, a negative view of our future, and the tradition of Huxley's Brave New World or Orwell's 1984. The book, The Handmaid's Tale, was my only exposure to the writing of Margaret Atwood, until a few years later, when I was on sabbatical serving as the guest minister at St. Mark's Unitarian Church in Edinburgh, Scotland. I bought tickets to hear her talk about poetry at the Edinburgh International Book Festival. I feared I might be the only man at the event. I thought I might experience an hour of prickly, angry feminist poetry. In fact, there were other men attending, and I found Margaret Atwood to be a very engaging poet. In an interview, she said, "I do not think that all men should be herded up and shoved off a cliff." Then she went on, "I don't think women should be made to feel incompetent, subservient, or inferior. Nor do I think women should be put down for choosing to be married, to be mothers, or flower arrangers." She said that if feminist means an unpleasant person who shouts at you, then she is not a feminist. On the other hand, if feminist means someone who believes women are human beings, she is a feminist. Miss Atwood is only 5 feet 3 inches tall. She was born in Ottawa in 1939, 2.5 months after the beginning of the Second World War. She says this is why she is short. If it had not been for food rationing during World War II, she would be 6 feet tall. I should explain that she makes exaggerated statements as if they were true. and waits to see if you catch on to the fact that she is joking. 6 months after she was born, her parents carried her in a backpack into the Quebec bush to a remote cabin in northwestern Quebec, where her father was doing research as a forest entomologist. Her parents liked being as far away from civilization as possible. Her mother because she hated housework and tea parties. Her father because he liked chopping wood. Today, living in Toronto, she says she still feels like an anthropologist exploring an unfamiliar civilization. Her parents also were not interested in what the sociologists would call rigid sex role stereotyping. She grew up in and out of the wilderness and did not attend a full year of school until she was in grade 8. This experience helped her, she said, helped her later to get a job as a summer camp counselor teaching small boys how to start fires. The Canadian backwoods had no theaters, no movies, no parades, and few functioning radios. There were also not many other people. The result was that Margaret learned to read early. She was lucky enough to have a mother who read aloud. The Canadian literary critic Northrop Frye said that we learn poetry through the seat of our pants, by being bounced up and down to the nursery rhymes that were read to by our parents when we were children. Margaret Atwood's first experiences with poetry were Mother Goose poems, which contain some of the strangest poems in the English language, such as Georgie, Porgy, Pudding and Pie kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. Or Wee Willie Winkle runs through the town, upstairs and downstairs in his nightgown, rapping at the window, crying through the lock, "Are the children in their beds? Now it's 8 o'clock." Little Margaret also learned poetry from the singing commercials that she heard on the radio, such as, and you can help me with the last line here, the last word. You'll wonder where the yellow went when you brush your teeth with. Margaret created her first book of poetry at the age of 5. She made the book herself, cutting the pages out of paper and sewing them together. Then she copied into the book all the poems she could remember, and when there were some blank pages left at the end, she added a few of her own to complete it. She says that this book was entirely satisfying, so satisfying that she felt she had nothing more to say, and gave up writing poetry altogether for 11 years, what she now calls her dark period. Later, as an adult, in her poem Bored, she recalled her childhood in the Canadian backwoods helping her father. All those times I was bored, out of my mind, holding the log while he sawed it, holding the string while he measured boards, distances between things, or pounded stakes into the ground for rows and rows of lettuce and beets, which then I, bored, weeded. Sometimes he would whistle, sometimes I would. The boring rhythm of doing things over and over, carrying the wood, drying the dishes. I could hardly wait to get the hell out of there, to anywhere else. Perhaps, though, boredom is happier. It is for dogs or groundhogs. Now, I wouldn't be bored. Now I would know too much. Now I would know. Eventually, Margaret Atwood left the Canadian wilderness and began to explore the world. One of her short poems is called Europe on $5 a Day. Sunrise. The thin, pocketed streets are being washed. The city's old, but new to me, and therefore strange, and therefore fresh. I walk along, looking at everything equally. I've got all I own in this bag. And then reading those words, I remember my own travel experiences when I was young. The city's old, but new to me, and therefore strange, and therefore fresh. I remember having the same experience. Her poems move on to adulthood. In addition to living in Toronto, she spends part of each summer in a simple home set among trees and birds on a remote island in Canada. She wrote, "The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage, you stand in the center of your room, your house, half acre, square mile, island, country, knowing at last how you got there, and saying, I own this," is the same moment when the trees unloosen their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliff fissures collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave, and you can't breathe. No, they whisper, you own nothing. You were a visitor. Time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming, we never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way around. I feel like I'm playing hooky from my life, from my responsibilities to all of you, when I sit down with a book of poetry and just glance through the pages, slowly reading, looking at the words of the poet, the words the poet has picked, looking at their order, opening myself to their images, the feelings, the memories they evoke. When she started writing poetry as a teenager, she said that she received encouragement from her grade 12 English teacher. The teacher said, Margaret, I can't understand a word of this, so it must be good. Later, she encountered the work of T.S. Eliot. She looked at Eliot's poems and thought, I don't understand a word of this, so it must be good. From reading Eliot, she learned that not all poems had to rhyme. Margaret Atwood wrote for 16 years before she could make a living out of her writing. She worked as a cashier behind the coffee shop soda counter and then graduated to teaching after she completed college. For a time, she worked teaching grammar to engineering students at 8:30 in the morning in a Quonset hut. About the engineering students, she said, it was all right. None of us were awake. I made them write imitations of Kafka, which I thought might help them in their chosen profession. Learning to write is a long process. When asked, she says that a writer should show their work to a few knowledgeable friends if the writer is lucky enough to have some. Suggestions may be made, which the writer is free to accept or reject. She adds 3 pitfalls of showing our writing to our friends. Pitfall number 1, if the writer attacks the friends for giving them suggestions, the friends are unlikely to make any more suggestions in the future. Pitfall number 2, the friends may be wrong. Pitfall number 3, if all the writer wants from these people is an encouraging reaction, i.e. not real suggestions, but a, hey, that's great, it would help matters to say so at the outset. There is nothing illegitimate about such a wish. Everyone needs moral uplift. Margaret Atwood today is the First Lady of Canadian literature. In Canada, people stop her on the street and ask for her autograph. And I saw this in Scotland at the book festival. I watched 1,000 people line up to get her to sign her latest book. About her childhood in the Canadian wilderness, she wrote, "On fine days, we spent our time turning over rocks to see what was underneath. The most disappointing was nothing. Then in ascending order came worms, millipedes, spiders, beetles, ant nests, toads, snakes, mice, and newts and salamanders. Newts and salamanders were the ultimate. They were extremely rare. Sometimes we just looked and meditated and put the rock back. Sometimes we poked things with a stick to see what would happen. People often ask me, what's the difference between writing poetry and writing fiction? And surely it is this. With a poem, you look and meditate and you put the rock back. With fiction, you poke things with a stick to see what will happen. During the pandemic, I cleaned house, taking a lot of stuff to places like Goodwill, or when they rejected it, to the dump. I like this poem of Atwood's, which describes the process of house cleaning and memories. This is the year of the sorting, of throwing out, of giving back. A shifting through the heaps, the piles, the drifts, the dunes, the sediments. Or less poetically, the shelves, the trunks, the closets, boxes, corners in the cellar, nooks, and cupboard boards. The junk, in other words, that's blowing in here, or else been saved, or else had eddied, or been thrown my way by unseen waves. For instance, 2 thick layers of blank glass jars that once held jam we made in those evaporated summers. A frugal stew of plastic bags. A cracked maroon umbrella, so prized when new. A chocolate box with crayon hands stored up for phantom children. Shoes with their grimy marks of toast that were once mine. Photos of the boys whose names are lost, posing so jauntily in front of chrome-trimmed cars, many of them dead now, others old. Everything speckled and faded, jumbled together like, let's say, this bowl of miscellaneous pebbles. And I think of our pebbles. This bowl of miscellaneous pebbles gathered time after time on beaches, now eroded or misplaced, but scooped up then and fingered for their beauty, and pocketed as mementos of some once indelible day. So I conclude this morning with a title poem from one of her poetry books. The name is The Door. It is a quick summary of all of life, beginning, middle, and end. The door swinging open is a metaphor for the reality that life ends with the mystery of death. The door swings open. You look in. It's dark in there, most likely spiders. Nothing you want. You feel scared. The door swings closed. The full moon shines. It's full of delicious juice. You buy a purse. The dance is nice. The door opens and swings closed so quickly you don't notice. The sun comes out. You have swift breakfasts with your husband, who is still thin. You wash the clothes. You love your children. You read the book. You go to the movies. It rains moderately. The door swings open. You look in. Why does this keep happening now? Is there a secret? The door swings closed. The snow falls. You clear the walk while breathing heavily. It's not as easy as it once was. Your children telephone sometimes. The roof needs fixing. You keep yourself busy. The spring arrives. The door swings open. It's dark in there, with many steps going down. But what is that shining? Is it water? The door swings closed. The dog has died. This has happened before. You got another. Not this time, though. Where is your husband? You gave up the garden. It's become too much. At night there are blankets. Nonetheless, you are wakeful. The door swings open. O God of hinges, God of long voyages, you have kept the faith. I invite you to stand as you're able and sing our closing hymn, number 159. 159. Closing words are by Robert Doss. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come here embracing life, may life return your affection. And for those who come to seek a path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step. And I invite you to turn in your order of service to the words for the extinguishing of the chalice, and we will say them together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.